Got very good arms.
He didn't fall? Inconceivable.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and it's time for the first comic book review of the week. And it might be the only single issue comic book review this week, to be completely honest. I had meant to put this out yesterday, and today was supposed to be Empire, but with all the Tom King news, I just really couldn't fit in time yet. So hopefully I'll be able to fit in Empire tomorrow, but I can't really make any guarantees on that. Although on Sunday, I will have a wrap-up of the 6-issue, the Killlock IDW series on that story, which I thought was absolutely magnificent. And hopefully there will be also a review of the recent graphic novel from Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips Pulp, which is absolutely amazing. But this here is X Factor. It's Leah Williams returning to the X-Men universe after her, her comic that was so bad it might be brilliant, in the realm of like The Room, maybe the worst movie of all times, but it's absolutely brilliant because it's so bad. Obviously, that would have been Extremis, which was in the Age of X-Men story, was just completely unreadable. I'm shocked that they brought her back to X-Men, to be completely honest. And here she's teaming up with David Baldeon on art, Israel Silva on colors. And while this doesn't quite reach the lows of Extremis, which would have been very difficult, like I said, that might be the worst X-Men miniseries of all time, maybe the worst Marvel miniseries of all time. I don't know. I've yet to read anything from Marvel quite that bad. Oh, the stink. But this is better than that, but it is certainly not good. And I definitely don't recommend it. Although I can definitely see some people enjoying this comic. If you like the Kardashians or other versions of reality TV where it's contrived fake drama, really forced interpersonal conflict where nothing really makes sense, there's only conflict, for the show, you're probably going to like this comic book because that's mostly what it is. And that's probably the biggest problem with X Factor, if I'm being honest. The basics of the story are like this. Northstar senses that his sister Aurora has passed away. He returns to Krakoa to see if she can be resurrected. He has some conflict with the Five because they said we have to prove that she's dead. He decides he needs to put a ragtag team of mutants together to go investigate, prove that she's dead so she can be resurrected. And then we have the big murder mystery, which should be the crux of the story. That's the meat here, this big mystery that happens as the team try to discover what happened to Aurora. Is she actually missing? What happened to her? Was she murdered? Let's find out all the details. But that's all of like 6 pages. This is a 35-page comic book. 6 pages of this comic book are actually dedicated to the story of the mystery. The rest of it is all interpersonal conflict and stupid contrived BS with 3 endings tacked onto this comic book, which I thought was amazing. And I will definitely cover all 3 of those endings at the very end of this review as I get to it. There's not a lot of good stuff here, but there are a few good things. I'm going to start out by talking about the art, which isn't too bad. Then I'm going to talk about the one part of this story that I really liked, that I thought was really effective. And then I'm going to get into all the awkward BS and why the comic book just kind of falls apart and does not work, for me at least. If you enjoy this, by all means, enjoy the comics that you like. There's certainly an audience for contrived drama. Reality TV is still going on for a reason, and there's a reason it's all scripted and it's all drama, because people do like that. Getting into the art's actually pretty good. Not the best art we've seen on X-Men or certainly in Marvel. David Baldeon's style in here is pretty over the top with expressions, which really actually fits what Leah Williams is doing as a writer here, because everything is over the top. So we get these character expressions like we're seeing on Northstar here. Elongated faces, very anime in style. Certainly fits the story. Not grade A comic book art, in my opinion. Like I said, it's expressive. There are a few scenes in here that are actually pretty darn good. Like I'm like, oh, that's pretty dope art. Not a whole lot of that in this comic book. And the color work by Israel Silva is rock solid as well. The coloring isn't oversaturated. You can tell that it's digital coloring, but it isn't overly saturated, which we get a lot nowadays. It is vibrant. That's certainly vibrant in some places, but it fits the story. I think the color work from Israel Silva was good. David Baldeon did his best to kind of fit the style of what Leah Williams was doing. So the art is fine. It's not great, but it's certainly pretty all right. Now, let's get into Leah Williams' story. And this is the only thing about this comic book that I really like. We finally revisit the Five, and we see that all the mutants on Krakoa are going and visiting them and kind of worshiping them and giving them gifts and kind of worshiping false idols. And this is really interesting right here. I want to see more of this. What effects are these gifts and offerings that people are giving them having on the Five? What kind of influence do the Five have on all of Krakoa now? They almost feel like deities, the way that other mutants are worshiping them here. And it's really interesting. Unfortunately, that is not what X Factor is about. There is a little bit of tie-in to the Five because the Five cannot resurrect people until it's confirmed they're dead. And that's why the X Factor investigation team, by the end of this comic book, is approved by the Quiet Council so they can assist the Five in confirming mutants are dead, and they can assist these people who are asking the Five to bring back their loved ones. They can go out there, do these investigations, and bring them back. But this here is cool. This is absolutely a comic book that I would read. Probably not if Leah Williams was writing it, but if somebody competent was writing a comic book about the Five and their effects on Krakoa, I would dive right into that. But unfortunately, that is not what this comic book is about. But this is absolutely the best part of this comic book. Very interesting, very cool. A lot of story that needs to be fleshed out that all ties back into House of X, Powers of 10, when we got those big reveals about the new mutant resurrection process that I would love to be explored. Not going to be explored in the series, but it is talked about a little bit in here. It's definitely cool. All right, now let's get into the stuff I don't like, and that's most of the comic book. And right here, we see it's all about conflict. There's so much weird forced conflict. Like Northstar returns to Krakoa to talk to the Five about resurrecting his sister. Within 2 panels, he and Hope want to murder each other. You know, Egg's having to hold her back. It's hold me back moment. And it's just, look at all this dialogue. That is what this comic book is. It is all words. There are some good pictures, but there's a lot of words to get through. And it's almost all weird conflict. And it's a lot to get through. And, you know, you can tell when 2 characters finally come into conflict has been earned. You know, you've been building to it, but nothing has been built here. You know, this is the very first issue, and it's just people colliding left and right. It's just so strange. When they finally get the X Factor team together, why are the X Factor team together? None of them seem to like each other. Why do they want to help each other if they all hate each other? And just the way that they put the team together is just strange. Northstar walks into a bar where Blob with a huge mustache is the bartender, and Polaris is there, and she's like, "You're going about it all wrong." And she puts up like an advertisement on Mutant Craigslist saying, we got spots to go and try and find Aurora, and we can go do that. And people just show up. Apparently, it's like all the characters that weren't interesting enough to be in other X-Men titles already were just decided to show up. Why are any of these people working together? They're just put together because these are the characters that Leah Williams was handed for the series. There's no work towards any of this. It just happens. And another really big problem with this is the investigation itself. This is essentially what the comic book is about. It's finding out what happened to Northstar's sister Aurora. Is she dead? Does someone have her kidnapped? Was there foul play involved? You know, what's going on here? And it happens in all of like 6 pages. This is a 35-page comic book. This investigation is supposed to be what the comic book is about. And it's like a 1/6 of the entire book. It makes no sense. There's no time given to it. And because there's no time given to it, there's no mystery. There's no intrigue. It's just step by step. Each mutant plays a part. Okay, you're the one that can sniff that she was here before, and you can remember her memories and find out what she left and maybe where she was going. And, oh, you have a dog that can catch the trail. And we have one guy that knows computers really well and can find her digital fingerprint, and we can know what car she was in. And Daken can use his pheromone abilities to make the guy at the front desk horny and want to bang him. A lot of weird Daken using his abilities to make people want to hump his leg jokes in here. Just a lot of really strange sexual overtones to this comic book, to be completely honest. Like nothing interesting, just weird. And like I said, there's no intrigue to this mystery. It's just there because they need to solve a mystery because that's what the comic book is about. But that's not really what the comic book is about. It's just about conflict. But this had to be here for it to be an X Factor investigations comic. And that's very frustrating. This is stupid. There is a ton of awkward and weird dialogue, but this page right here absolutely takes the cake. Let me read through this because you got to hear it to believe it. This is Northstar. You're such a potent concentration of disaster bisexual that I fear your chaos is contagious. Nah, not when you've got distinguished by Prodigy around to keep things balanced. Well, we still don't need an enforcer or whatever it is you seem to think you have to offer an investigation. Come on, sweetie, please. Don't you want to come see Grandma? No, her breath is stinky like Dookie. Ha ha ha. Enforcer. That's typecasting. Oh, do you do anything other than slice and flirt? I didn't know. As a matter of fact, I have many talents. So how about we all just calm down? Huh? Daken's pheromone manipulation. What? I hate Grandma. You don't mean that, sweetie. Yes, she does. Huh? You're raising a psychopath. Just so you know. So awkward, so weird. Like I said, that's the weirdest. And look at Prodigy's face in that one. Who is the psychopath here? Who is the psychopath? Look at her face as she's telling this woman that her daughter is a psychopath. Who's the psychopath, really? Look at that face. That's probably the worst thing Baldeon did in this whole comic book. But she just looks absolutely insane. There's a lot of weird characterization, but I'm only going to talk about one of them here because there's always so much time to review like this, and it's Polaris. When we meet her, like I said, she's in this bar with Blob, and he's got this big mustache. He looks like a moron, but I guess he's the new bartender at the Stinky Tiki Hut or whatever it's called. And look at Polaris. Has she ever been really presented as a hipster? She's just like a hipster douchebag sitting in the bar with her little beanie hat on, just being a hipster douchebag. And it just felt so out of character. It was the weirdest introduction. I looked at her. I was like, she has green hair. I think it's Polaris, but it's not Polaris. I've never seen her look like that. Why does she look like that here? Is she incognito? Is she already undercover for X Factor investigations? They haven't even got together yet. And it turns out, no, she's just a hipster. And then later, this is really, I only wanted to talk really about the dialogue in one panel, but I gotta read this. This meeting between Polaris and her father Magneto is so strange. And this is Magneto. Lorna, a word. Of course. That was impressive. What the six of you accomplished today. But I'm concerned you would shirk such an important leadership role. Why have you done this? And he's saying this because Polaris asked for Northstar to be the leader, not her. And she says, I have my reasons. Be that as it may, you have a name here, mine. And with that name comes no small measure of expectation. Father, if you had to describe my personality, what would you say? And he's got nothing to say. Like, he doesn't know his own daughter. Obviously, there is conflict between the two, but we've seen them work together in Dawn of X. What father, good or bad, wouldn't have a word to say if his daughter asked a question like that? It was just so weird and so awkward and made Magneto look like an enormous piece of shit, if I'm being completely honest. I don't know. Polaris seems pretty odd here. Not a very good depiction. I thought she would probably be the standout character in the comic book, but really, not at all. She's not at all. All right, let's get to the ending. So there's 3 endings in this comic book, which I found baffling. It's 35 pages. They spent no time on the investigation. There was no mystery to it. They didn't like find the body and then have to discover what happened to her. They found the body, discovered what happened to her, figured out why the guy she was with is dead. Now, they might not know everything, but they pretty much got all this wrapped up, and then now they can resurrect her. And you would think when Northstar returned to Krakoa with her body, that's the end of the comic book. Boom, perfect time to stop the comic book. Leaves you on a little bit of a cliffhanger, and they can revisit the story and see what happens next. But that is not the end of the comic book. It keeps going. The next thing that happens after this is they go to the Quiet Council, and they explain to them everything that happened. They go through step by step all their investigations. And it's even mentioned by one of the Quiet Council members. They're like, man, you guys are really smart. It felt really sarcastic. And I hope that's how she meant it, because that's how I read it. That's how what I was thinking when they were explaining all this stuff in really boring, mundane detail. And so at the end of that, Charles Xavier says, we've been looking for an answer to this problem. We are now opening X Factor investigations. You are the X Factor team. And then they're like, who's going to be the leader? They all assumed it was going to be Polaris, and she said, no, I don't want to be the leader. It should be Northstar. And he looks confused, and he's like, no, yes, no, yes. And then they all made fun of him for not accepting it right away. And so that was the second ending of the comic book. X Factor Investigations is created, but that is not the end of the book. It keeps going. There's a second epilogue to this. Polaris talks to Krakoa and creates the Boneyard to house X Factor investigations. So she makes this enormous building where they're all going to live together, dormitory style, and it's going to house the team. And it turns out Forge has planted these plants, and then basically they're like tweets. You can pick up one of these seeds, you can whisper something to it, and you throw it in the air, and it heads right back to the boneyard, and the team from X Factor Investigations can hear what you said and go look for your loved one, because people want to do this anonymously, apparently. And look how many seeds have already arrived. Everybody is looking for a loved one. They want to resurrect the mutant family. It makes sense. But that was the third conclusion, and that ended up being the final conclusion. As you can see on the bottom, to be continued. And I don't know. It felt like Return of the King almost earned those 3 endings, but X Factor #1 certainly did not. Way too many endings. This comic book went on forever. It was actually hard to read, in my opinion. So there you have it, folks. That's my review of this comic. I kind of went over the basic story, kind of a few of the things that I like. Most of this comic I absolutely do not like. This is Kardashian level trash comic. If that's your thing, you're absolutely going to love it. But if you want a well-constructed story, an intense mystery that draws you in with intrigue, that is absolutely not available here. If you like great character work and great character progression, none of that is here. If you like dick jokes, if you like characters acting really strange, if you like people arguing and yelling at each other for no reason whatsoever, X Factor is the comic book for you. If you like good comics, you're probably going to want to skip this one. I wish I had. And it's Leah Williams. Enough said. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.